We hear a lot about mindfulness these days. What do you think of when you hear the word mindfulness? It means different things to different people. For this course, I'd like us to think of mindfulness as an awareness of what's happening in the present moment. It's about paying attention to what's going on in the world around you, as well as to what's happening in your mind, your thoughts and feelings. It's intentional and non-judgmental. You make a conscious choice to attend to what's happening in the moment, and you accept it, rather than getting caught up thinking about whether it's good or bad, or wishing it were different. Throughout this course, we will cover many different strategies that leaders can use to boost their own well-being and that of their employees. I chose to focus on mindfulness first because becoming a more mindful leader can help you better apply the knowledge you're going to be acquiring. You see, learning to be more present will give you a greater awareness, and this awareness can help you choose which of the well-being strategies might be most useful at any given time. Research has revealed an impressive array of mindfulness benefits. It's been linked to multiple health benefits, including lower stress, anxiety, and depression, reduced pain, better quality sleep, and an enhanced immune system. Other benefits of mindfulness include better concentration and productivity, improved memory and learning, enhanced creativity, and less emotional reactivity. Many studies have explored the benefits of mindfulness at work. In one, 219 employees from different organizations took a mindfulness assessment and reported their levels of job satisfaction and emotional exhaustion at the end of the day for 5 consecutive workdays. Results showed that on days when employees were more mindful, they experienced higher job satisfaction and less emotional exhaustion. Mindfulness has been shown to improve the performance of managers. In one study, middle managers received 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation training. Afterward, when compared to a control group, the managers reported higher satisfaction, lower stress levels, and their supervisor-rated performance was significantly higher. Now, given all of these benefits, it's not surprising that so many companies are embracing the idea of mindfulness. Aetna, Google, Target, General Mills, Nike, Apple, Procter & Gamble, Intel, McKinsey & Company, and others have taken steps to promote mindfulness among their employees. Some of the companies have meditation rooms, while others offer meditation classes or mindful leadership programs. The results from some of these programs have been astonishing. Aetna claims that its mindfulness program reduced employee health costs by 7% and raised productivity $3,000 per employee per year. Janice Martirano introduced mindfulness to General Mills over a decade ago. The program was so successful that she founded the Institute for Mindful Leadership to share it with a broader audience. And there was so much interest in the program created at Google called Search Inside Yourself that it was spun off as an independent company to teach mindfulness practices to people around the world. So we know that being mindful can help you to be a better leader, and that creating conditions that let your employees experience more mindfulness will help them to thrive. But it does take work, because mindfulness is not our natural state. Our minds have a tendency to wander. In order to learn more about our wandering minds, Harvard psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert designed a study in which they surveyed 2,250 people at random intervals using an iPhone app. Each time participants were contacted, they were asked what they were currently doing and whether they were thinking about that or something else. On average, the participants reported that their minds were wandering 47% of the time. In fact, we often find ourselves in a state that's not just unfocused, but altogether mindless. Just the other day, I was driving home from work, and as I pulled into the garage, I remembered that I had planned to stop at the post office on my way home. Has that ever happened to you? Or have you ever been in a conversation and realized you haven't been listening to what the other person was saying? Or sat down to your meal and noticed your plate was suddenly empty, but you hardly remember eating? These are all examples of mindlessness. We go through much of our day on autopilot, so caught up in our thoughts that we don't notice what's happening right here, right now. In the Harvard mind-wandering study, the researchers also asked people to report how happy they were each time they were contacted. And they found that people were less happy when their minds were wandering. One reason we may be less happy when our minds wander is that our thoughts often turn to unpleasant things in the past or the future. We regret or ruminate about things that have gone wrong, or we worry about things that might go wrong. I'm especially good at worrying. I can get really creative when it comes to thinking about all the bad things that might happen to my teenagers, or to me, or to anyone for that matter. Mark Twain's quote suits me perfectly. He said, "I've lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened." So being mindful is clearly good for our physical and our mental well-being. But how can we leverage its benefits in the workplace? Let's start by looking at 3 specific benefits of mindfulness for leaders. One is enhanced focus, another is a calm, clear mind, and a third is greater emotional intelligence due to decreased emotional reactivity and improved relationships. Our naturally wandering mind makes it hard to stay focused on the present moment. But the added turmoil of today's super busy, hyper-connected world makes being mindful more difficult than ever before. Technology offers constant distractions that feed our tendency for mind wandering. We're bombarded with incoming information, which makes focusing extremely challenging. Most of us live in a state of continuous partial attention. We're paying attention to many different things simultaneously, but can only do so on a superficial level. So we aren't really paying attention to anything. The Nobel Prize-winning economist Herbert Simon said, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention." And this was years before the internet. I can't imagine what he would think about our world today. People who practice meditation are more mindful. And studies show that they're better at sustaining focus, switching tasks less often. Researchers at the University of Washington recruited 39 human resource workers to participate in a study. Half of them took an 8-week mindfulness meditation course. Afterwards, they were all given a series of office tasks to complete, like scheduling meetings and writing memos while answering emails and phone calls. Those who had participated in the training were able to focus longer on a task, spending 20% more time concentrating on each activity. Now, one measure that researchers use to assess focus is the Stroop test. It presents people with a list of colors, but the color of the ink is different from the color the word describes. So the word red might appear in green, and the word yellow might be printed in blue. The task is to say the color of the ink, not the word. I'll give you a second to try it yourself. When this test was given to meditators and non-meditators, the meditators performed much better. They named more words and made significantly fewer errors. Enhanced focus of the sort that mindfulness provides is critical for learning and performance across a wide variety of fields. Its benefits have been well documented in professional sports, for example. Dwelling on a missed shot or an interception can prevent athletes from focusing on the play at hand. They must be able to let go of the past in order to pay full attention to the present moment. Many coaches and athletes, even entire teams, have embraced mindfulness meditation as a way of developing the ability to focus in order to improve performance. Phil Jackson was well known for using meditation when he coached the Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers. LeBron James is often seen meditating on the sidelines of his basketball games. The Seattle Seahawks and many Olympic athletes have also embraced mindfulness. Imagine what increased focus would mean to you as a leader. How much of your day is spent out of focus, bombarded with distractions or wrapped up in thoughts of the past or worries for the future? If you were to give your full attention to the task at hand, how would your performance change? Robert Stiller, who founded the Keurig Green Mountain Coffee Company, said meditation helps develop your abilities to better focus and to accomplish your tasks. Focused attention and high performance go hand in hand, and the science shows that mindfulness can help you get there. Now let's move on to the second benefit of mindfulness for leaders, a calm, clear mind. Now for someone in a critical decision-making role, mental clarity is paramount. In fact, it may be the single most important trait to develop to ensure that you make decisions based on an accurate assessment of present circumstances. So how does mindfulness come into play? We'll start by taking a look at the way stress affects our brain. The amygdala is one of the oldest parts of the brain. It sits right at the top of the spinal cord. There are actually two small amygdalae, one on each side, that are part of the limbic system. Now, this is the emotional center of our brain. If the amygdala senses something as being potentially threatening or dangerous, it sends an alarm to the rest of our brain. The prefrontal cortex of our brain evolved later. It's responsible for executive functions, like making plans and organizing action. This part of the brain takes just a little bit longer to react than the amygdala. So when something scares us or upsets us or stresses us out, our amygdala signals our sympathetic nervous system to take over and prepare us for a fight or flight response. At this moment, our emotional brain, not our thinking brain, is in charge. Taking a mindful pause, such as a long, deep breath, activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which slows everything down and returns our body to a more calm, thoughtful state. Now, research shows that mindfulness training can actually decrease the emotional reactivity of the amygdala. In one study, conducted at Emory University, subjects participated in 8 weeks of mindful attention meditation training. 3 weeks before and 3 weeks after the training, they took part in brain scanning sessions where their brain activity was measured as they viewed positive, negative, and neutral images. Results showed that there was a reduction in amygdala response to emotional stimuli after the training. I like the analogy of a snow globe. When our minds are at the mercy of our emotional reactions, they're like a shaken snow globe, lost in a blizzard of fear or worry or doubt. It's simply impossible to see the present situation with any clarity in such circumstances, and therefore impossible to make a sound, well-informed decision. Mindfulness has the effect of setting down the snow globe. The snow settles, our minds become clear, and this clarity improves our judgment. Steve Jobs said that mindfulness allows you to hear more subtle things, and that's when your intuition starts to blossom, and you start to see things more clearly. Your mind just slows down. You see so much more than you could see before. Now, a third benefit of mindfulness for leaders is improved emotional intelligence. In his book, Working with Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman cites hundreds of studies conducted across companies, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies worldwide, all of which concluded that emotional intelligence was more important for leadership success than IQ or previous experience. IQ and technical skills predict performance in lower-level jobs, but the competency that best predicts leader success is emotional intelligence. He quotes the head of a global executive search firm as saying, CEOs are hired for their intellect and business expertise, and fired for a lack of emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence requires both an awareness of emotions and an appropriate response based on that awareness. Emotionally intelligent people are aware of their own emotions and use that knowledge to regulate their behavior. They're also aware of the emotions of others, which lets them interact in a way that improves relationships. I mentioned before how our amygdala takes over when we're emotionally triggered by something that upsets us or stresses us out. When this happens, we sometimes say or do things without thinking them through. Mindfulness provides an alternative to living reactively. It promotes behavior regulation by helping us notice the emotions we're experiencing without getting carried away by them. It creates a space between our initial emotional reaction to a situation and the way in which we ultimately respond. And it's in this space that clear thinking and conscious choice can happen. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, identified this space between stimulus and response as the cornerstone of our power as individuals. In his influential book, Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote, "In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom." A ringing endorsement for mindfulness, if ever there was one. One thing that mindfulness practice can show us rather quickly is that emotions are transient states that pass through us like clouds pass overhead. Our body's chemical response to an emotion lasts only 90 seconds. But that's enough time for us to do or say something without thinking. One effective mindfulness technique that can have an immediate impact is simply labeling your emotions as you become mindful of them. Try not to judge the emotion as bad or good, simply give it a name. The act of labeling an emotion instantly puts distance between you and the emotion, decreasing its intensity and re-engaging your thinking brain. Even this small bit of distance can be enough to let you choose a thoughtful course of action rather than acting on emotional impulse. But before you can label emotions, you have to be aware of them. When we're moving through the day mindlessly, we sometimes don't even notice we're experiencing a certain emotion. Practicing mindfulness on a regular basis, using the techniques we'll discuss shortly, will prime you to become more aware of all that's happening in the present moment, including your own emotional state. Another benefit of mindfulness, and one that's especially important for people in leadership positions, is that it can help to improve our relationships, both personal and professional. Many of us aren't especially good listeners because our minds wander off. We think about what we should say next, or we're distracted by a text message. The increased focus that comes with mindfulness lets us really pay attention to what people are saying. It also increases the likelihood that we notice nonverbal signs that communicate emotions. Being aware of people's emotions lets us respond to them in an emotionally intelligent way. We have to know how someone feels in order to take appropriate action, and doing so strengthens our relationship with them. In one study, 44 couples attended 8 2.5-hour meditation sessions and 1 6-hour retreat. Afterwards, they reported significantly improved relationship satisfaction and greater relatedness to and acceptance of their partners. In another study, researchers at Northeastern University had people complete an 8-week mindfulness meditation course in 2 consecutive groups. Between the 2 courses, they ran an experiment. Participants from both groups were invited to the lab and placed in a waiting room. While there, a person using crutches entered the room to find there were no free seats. Half of the participants who had already completed the mindfulness training offered their seat to the person using crutches, while only 16% of the participants who had not yet received training offered their seats. The meditation course tripled the likelihood of a compassionate response. In order to offer their seat, people first needed to be aware that someone needed it. We'll dig deeper into how these attributes of acceptance and compassion can impact your role as a business leader in future lectures. But at this point, I'll just say that practicing mindfulness, and in particular emotional awareness, can make your interactions with your peers and your employees meaningful and authentic in ways that can have far-reaching positive consequences. So we've seen how being mindful or present contributes to our happiness, our health, our performance, and our relationships. Now for even better news. You and your employees can enjoy these benefits because mindfulness is a skill that can be learned and practiced. The best way to cultivate mindfulness is through meditation. Meditation is a formal way of training your ability to focus. The practice of focusing your attention on something like your breath and refocusing each time your mind wanders is an excellent way to strengthen your attention muscle. It improves your ability to sustain focus and concentration. When you meditate, you become better at noticing when you've become distracted throughout the day, so that you can bring your attention back to the task at hand. You become aware of your thoughts and emotions without judging them or getting carried away by them. If you imagine that each thought is a train passing by, then meditation teaches you how to stay on the platform and wave at each train as it passes through the station. If you're new to meditation, try to approach it by thinking of it as going to the gym for your mind. It's attention training instead of strength training. The easiest way to begin is by focusing your attention on your breath. You'll become distracted, I guarantee you. And each time that happens, just bring your attention back to your breath. I like to count each time I have to bring my attention back as another mental rep. This keeps me from feeling frustrated on days when my monkey mind is especially active. The key is to treat yourself with kindness. Don't get upset when you become distracted. Just reorient your attention and smile, because each rep is building your attention muscle so that you're getting better and better at sustaining your focus, even when you aren't meditating. If you decide to give meditation a try, start with just a few minutes each day. Consistency is more important than the amount of time you spend. Do less than you think you can do in the beginning. If you think you can do 5 minutes, meditate for 3 minutes. As you practice, you'll find it becomes easier and you can increase the amount of time. You can meditate anytime, anywhere. It doesn't have to be first thing in the morning, sitting on a pillow in a lotus position. I usually meditate after lunch, sitting in a chair. But I also meditate on planes or sitting in my car. Try to find a place and a time where you'll be free from distractions. Sit in a comfortable position, but keep your spine erect to minimize sleepiness. Your goal is not to stop thoughts from arising. It's to not get caught up in them. Meditation is simple, but not easy. Be kind to yourself, keep trying, and remember it's called a practice because you'll always be progressing. You may want to download one of the many available meditation apps to guide you as you're getting started. And if you're interested in learning more about mindfulness and different types of meditation, the Great Courses offers some wonderful classes that I encourage you to check out. The next strategy for increasing mindfulness may strike you as impossible for a leader in today's hectic business environment, but it can make a huge difference in the long run. It's this: do one thing at a time. Now, I know I can hear many of you saying, wait a minute, there's no way. I can't get everything done doing 4 things at a time. How can I get it all done if I do only one thing at a time? Let me respond by doing a little myth busting about multitasking. We all like to think that we're good at multitasking, but actually, it's impossible to multitask. Your brain is incapable of doing 2 things at once. When you think you're multitasking, you're really switching your attention back and forth between 2 things rapidly. Multitasking increases your cognitive load, which hurts your performance, reducing productivity by up to 40%. Researchers at the University of London tested people's IQ while they were emailing and text messaging. They found that on average, participants' IQ was 10 points lower when they were multitasking. This effect is 2 times more detrimental to our performance than the impact of smoking pot. One fascinating study showed that people who multitask more often are actually worse at it. Their brains take longer to switch between tasks than the brains of people who tend to do one thing at a time. You see, focus requires that your brain pay attention to whatever it is you're doing while ignoring everything else. The more you multitask, the more trouble your brain has filtering out irrelevant information. So you're distracted by everything, making it even more difficult to sustain focused attention. Multitasking also hurts your psychological well-being by causing you to feel stressed and overwhelmed. The cognitive overload brought on by trying to do several things at once leads to intense mental exhaustion. And performing poorly can lead to stress. In fact, we do see increased levels of the stress hormone cortisol when people are multitasking. And this can become a vicious cycle because increased levels of cortisol further impede our cognitive functioning, leading to even greater stress. One study by researchers at Michigan State University showed that engaging in media multitasking, like emailing while texting while scanning Facebook, results in higher levels of anxiety and depression. Not surprisingly, technology is a major culprit in the temptation to multitask. The average smartphone user checks his or her phone 150 times a day. Each beep, vibration, or blinking light yanks you out of the present moment. Even if you choose not to look at the new message, your mind is thinking about it. Who was that? I wonder what the message is. When will I have a chance to check it? Your mind has already wandered off. You're no longer present. This multitasking culture has major implications for business. According to one study, employees lose up to 2 hours of productivity a day due to distractions. They spend an average of 11 minutes on a task before being distracted. And it then takes them 25 minutes to return to whatever it is they were doing. Even if your attention is diverted for a short amount of time, say you quickly check an email that has come in, it takes time for your brain to refocus on the task. It has to reactivate all of those circuits that are no longer firing. I've turned off all of my notifications on the phone, and people look at me like I'm crazy when I suggest they might want to try it themselves. But I do suggest it. So far, nothing terrible has happened. It didn't take long for my children and others to figure out that if something was really important, they'd have to call me. Once you've minimized the distractions around you, give yourself permission to spend a few minutes each day doing nothing but being aware. This is what we call a mindful pause. Taking a few mindful pauses throughout the day doesn't take much time, but it can be a powerful way to check in with yourself and your surroundings. Combined with a few long, deep breaths, it can lower stress and keep your mind clear and focused. The best way to fit mindful pauses into your day is to find some cues to remind you. For instance, each time you sit down in front of your computer, take a moment to bring your attention to your breath. Before you pick up the phone to make a call, pause to notice how you're feeling. Practice mindfulness when you walk to meetings or to the bathroom. Try taking a mindful pause with a few deep breaths before beginning a difficult situation, or if you're nervous about making a presentation. All of these mindfulness techniques will help your own performance as a business leader. But as companies like Google and Target and General Mills have discovered, creating mindfulness initiatives for your employees can have a positive impact as well. What could you do to foster an environment at work where everyone experiences more mindfulness? Start by having conversations with your team about mindfulness and how it can reduce stress and increase productivity. Explain how multitasking and technological distractions prevent us from being mindful. Modifying technology use is probably the easiest way to help people focus. Ask them not to bring their phones to meetings, or have a basket where they can leave them at the door. Now, this might cause a bit of anxiety for some at first, but resistance is often short-lived once people see how much quicker meetings are when everyone's focused. Checking email less often is another effective strategy for increasing mindfulness. In one experiment, researchers asked adults to check their inbox 3 times a day, and another group to check as often as they wanted. After 1 week, those who checked only 3 times were far less stressed and answered roughly as many emails, but in 20% less time. Many work cultures have expectations of immediate responsiveness. Creating an environment where people can experience more mindfulness requires a shift in these cultural norms. Encourage people to schedule times throughout the day to check their email so that they aren't constantly distracted by incoming messages. Assume that a delayed response is a sign that someone is focused on their work. Most importantly, lead by example. Put your phone down. Be present in your conversations with employees. Work on creating a space between your emotions and your actions. Let your employees see you doing it and encourage them to do the same. A healthier, more productive workplace will follow.